this week. There are only 4 weeks left. But let's catch up on last week and look forward to this week with James.
What's going on, world? It's your boy at Big Game James _36 here with Greg McGarity, and this is the TaxSlayer Gator Bowl Drive to Selection presented by Toyota. Each and every week we bring you updates about the week before college football and the present week coming up and how it relates to the TaxSlayer Gator Bowl. Last weekend was completely crazy. Makes it more exciting though, because now there's more teams in play, more things going, and that's what happens when you have two pretty competitive conferences in the ACC and the SEC. I'm going to steal the SEC saying it just means more, I guess, for both of these conferences. But what did you think about it last week?
Well, it brought a lot of more teams into play with just some games that are had amazing endings. From Clemson's standpoint, they've got a really long road to go. They play at NC State this weekend. That's going to be a tough game, but it brought Louisville and Notre Dame up with North Carolina as far as a New Year's Day 6 Bowl. So one of those teams is going to come out of that group right now, but it certainly brought a lot of teams in the hunt for our game as well because of success that they had this weekend.
Well, it's like how the mighty have fallen. It never just seems to be a slow thing when it comes to the ACC. It's like Florida State was on top, then they weren't, then they got back, and then they weren't again. Clemson was looking like they were going to be dominant and make a run, and man, is the fall pretty steep right now. With them losing to Miami, kind of what does that kind of again do? I know we were talking about it rises other people up, but how does that kind of change the season for Miami, and kind of what are the prospects of Clemson in your opinion?
Well, Miami with 5 wins now. Of course, they could have had 6 if they took a knee, and they'd be right up there with Louisville and Notre Dame and Carolina. But it kept them in contention, in the hunt for our game. Clemson's got some work to do because they just have 4 wins overall. They've got a tough game this weekend. They still have Notre Dame out there. So, these teams that we're selecting have to be within a certain amount of games, total games won, not just conference play, but total games won to be in our premium pool for our game.
Yeah, so also you had, obviously Louisville lost to Pitt last week. They've got a pretty interesting matchup coming up here this weekend. Duke losing to Florida State, which now knocks them down to 1 loss in the ACC. But North Carolina getting shook up and beat. Who saw that coming?
James, it just shows if you don't have great effort and play at your best, you're going to come out on the short end. I think Mac Brown said it best. They just wanted it more than Carolina, and I know that's tough for a coach to say, but certainly the tide shifted for Virginia. They got a game with a great effort, so really happy to see that. But it certainly damaged North Carolina's hopes of being in that upper echelon of the teams in the country.
Teams that just don't really know. Again, more exciting games just happened this week. But Boston College is better than what we all thought they were going to be. Constellanos, however you say his name, is actually a pretty darn good quarterback. But that Georgia Tech game was pretty exciting. And actually, probably does that make, if BC kind of wins out, could they be a dark horse to come here?
I'll tell you what, that's the great thing about it. We're entering week 9, and there's so much at play, with 13 weeks to go in a season. So some teams can get hot at the end, as we saw with South Carolina last year, got hot at the end and had some great wins. So I think the exciting thing is a lot of teams have a lot to play for, and there are no teams that are totally out of it on either side of the ledger.
Going over into the SEC, we had what were some of the matchups last week that kind of shaped the way that we're going in this direction?
Well, the Alabama-Tennessee game was huge. And now Alabama hosts LSU next week. Both LSU and Alabama have a bye this week, which is going to really be key for them. I think, oddly enough, Mississippi State's win over Arkansas gave Mississippi State 4 wins this year. Arkansas is really struggling. They have an off week before they play at Florida next week. And then Ole Miss playing a really strong game in a tough environment at Auburn and won by a score or two, and really showed that they've got a chance to really wreck up some things. But, Missouri dominating their game against South Carolina. So you've got some intrigue on the East and the West in the SEC this year.
And you still got Missouri with matchups still against Florida. You got obviously this weekend coming up, and we'll get into that. The SEC still shaping out in that, and as you said, the game with Alabama and LSU, again, started off obviously with a loss to Florida State. A very exciting loss to Ole Miss, but it's crazy to see how things change with Jaden Daniels possibly being one of the best players in the nation on the best offense in the nation. So I want people to realize there's only one person who stopped Jaden Daniels. It's Coach Adam Fuller at Florida State. So I want y'all to respect my defensive coordinator. But moving forward into this week, what are some key matchups that everybody should be watching? And we'll start on the SEC side because I think there are more interesting ones over there.
Well, Mississippi State Auburn, that's a fight for bowl eligibility. So we'll see how that game fleshes out. Tennessee, Kentucky is going to be interesting because Tennessee coming off of an emotional loss, and Kentucky trying to right the ship there and get things going, get some momentum back. And then obviously Georgia, Florida here in Jacksonville. Usually the winner sometimes of that game usually ends up in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. So if Florida beats Georgia, they still have to go on the road and play at Missouri and at LSU and end up with Florida State. So there's some really, really tough roads ahead. And Georgia, if they win, they play Missouri, Ole Miss, Tennessee back-to-back. So once looked at a rather easy schedule, shows you that you can never make predictions on the front end of the season, knowing how successful teams can be during the season.
And those are, and even with Florida playing much better with Graham Mertz, the people gave them expectations for the beginning of the season. But when you put Florida, Ole Miss, which we all know, if Lane can't do anything, Lane can dial up some offense. Missouri's offense being explosive, that's a lot. But kind of sticking with that, with your experience being on, what is it like for Florida, Georgia? I've been to one. It's kind of crazy. I still like the name. I don't know why they changed it, but it was the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. But what was it like as an athletic director, actually on both sides of it, for that game?
Well, for the Georgia fans, it's a whole week at the beaches, whether it's the Georgia beaches or from Ponte Vedra to Jack's Beach, Neptune. And for Florida, it was more or less just a drive-in, drive-out game. The Georgia fans obviously made more of a party of the whole week. But as a player, once you drive over the Hart Bridge and you see the orange and the red, and it doesn't happen anywhere other than in Texas, Oklahoma, and Army, Navy. So there are only 3 of those games left that have the tradition and pageantry. But you got the stadium split in half, and it's very unusual in college football, and it's a tradition I hope stays for a long, long time here in Jacksonville.
That's something I did not know that. So I've been to 2/3 of the unique games. I love Army, Navy. It's probably some of the worst football you ever watch, but exciting. It's like going to a bowl game with two with not bad teams, archaic offenses. I would say that, like, nobody really does what they do. But you're right, the pageantry, the way the guys are in their dress blues, they're moving, things like that. And I've been to, I've been to 2 Florida Georgia since I've lived here, and it is fun. It is a great atmosphere. Rivalry games are what makes college football so much different than everything else, because you never know. Florida's coming into this thing, and I think I saw the spread. No matter how much I like to bash Florida, I just could never take a team with a 25-point spread in a rivalry game. That's a lot. But Georgia's very talented. But Florida, I think, is a little bit better than what people are giving them credit for. Shifting over to the ACC, we talked about it off camera. Lots of craziness that with North Carolina losing and then Louisville losing the week before kind of threw things off. I actually called one of my friends in Louisville and said, "Hey, y'all losing to Duke this week?" I was like, "Because I need to know." But he said he doesn't know yet. But there's nobody out right now, and there's technically nobody in. Florida State that wins the next 2 weeks, they're guaranteed to lock up their spot. But outside of that, everybody with 2 losses has an outside shot. Now, the 2 loss teams like Miami, like I said, they have to do some kind of major Pythagorean theorem type of stuff, equations to be able to get it in. But I think I told you Virginia Tech actually could win out and be in the ACC championship. So what is this weekend slate of games? Which ones are you interested in, and how do you think it affects the ACC championship and the bowl?
I think there are 2 games that kind of stand out. Duke at Louisville is a big game for both schools. They're both in contention, obviously, for really, really great bowl games. We'll just have to see if Duke can maintain. Does Leonard play this week? Who knows? He obviously didn't play the whole game last week. And then, oddly enough, Clemson at NC State. NC State is struggling somewhat this year. Clemson's struggling as well. So you're going to see 2 teams get after it, and Clemson having to really uphold their historical piece. I mean, they're 4-3 right now. So it's a huge game for them for bowl games, and hopefully they can stay in contention in the selection pool of the premium pool with us, but they've got some work to do here at the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, quarterback play just not great. NC State at NC, it's a really weird place to play. They have a really rabid fan base, a lot of energy. And Clemson, I just don't know what happened to Cade. Cade went from really, really high stock, a lot of talk, to just having just being there. All right. And then, as you talked about with Duke and Louisville, getting a chance to see firsthand Riley Leonard, an amazing competitor. Quarterback, and that's sometimes in college is more important than just being a great overall quarterback. It's just your presence and leadership and how that pans out. We're going over here to the hunt before we go into see if any changes happen in our predictions. We still have only 2 teams that we believe will be in the college football playoff. That's Florida State and Georgia. That hasn't changed. But let's talk about how our New Year's 6 thing has changed a little bit from here.
Well, we know if Florida State plays up, then the ACC needs to place a team in the Orange Bowl. And so, they're going to take the next best team, probably the highest ranked team that's going to be in the bowl standings at that point in time. And right now, you've got Carolina, Louisville, Notre Dame, and that are kind of still in play. And all 3 of those teams obviously will not go to the New Year's Day 6. So those 2 teams that don't qualify for the New Year's Day 6 would drop into our pool. So our pool has grown significantly. We think there are 8 teams in the ACC and 8 teams in the SEC. So a lot of movement there, but that board will change pretty quickly week to week as teams either work their way in or work their way out of our bowl game.
And some interesting things here as far as the obviously Alabama is the only other team in the SEC that we believe can be there, unless LSU. We'll know more when LSU plays Alabama. But Wake Forest now looking like they may have an outside shot. Miami, who knows? Again, that whole in the hunt thing could potentially change because they could be in the ACC championship game. Going here to the predictions, I actually like 2 of these. One of them, I'm gonna have you explain again because I think that would be like a perfect matchup for Jacksonville. But we'll explain it a little bit. But Clemson LSU, that should be if Clemson's able to kind of right the ship, that would be an explosive game. 2 teams that have traditionally been pretty good, 2 coaches that are media friendly, and 2 good fan bases. That's that from the colors and the scratch. That looks like a new one right there.
It's new. I think you're seeing some common names pop up. Duke's on 4 of the 7 that we list. Clemson's in there. Louisville, Miami, and really on the other side with the SEC, LSU, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Missouri's entered the picture. Ole Miss. I think regardless, any of those games would be great matchups. So I don't think there's only one that can't really happen. That's Notre Dame versus Florida. So,
and that's the one that I think would be perfect for here. It'd be a really good game, good matchup. But Notre Dame again, not be impossible because Notre Dame played here the previous season.
So we'll see. It's going to be interesting, but that board too will fluctuate, and some have been pretty consistent throughout the whole time. But certainly things as we get towards the end with 4 weeks after this weekend, it's really going to take a lot of changes on the board.
So while we have it here, so we've seen what the predictions are for our game. What do you think? Well, who would be your 4 right now for the college football playoff?
Well, I think you've got the Ohio State-Michigan winner. One of those teams would have to be undefeated. I think you've got Georgia right now. They've got to run the table. Alabama's still in play there as well, so there may be a collision course if things play out like they're predicted to, but those things sometimes never, ever happen. I think Florida State's in there. I don't see them stumbling coming down the end. They'll have a challenge at Florida. If Florida keeps playing well, as you well know, that game's always difficult to play. Home team has some success. And then you've got Washington and Oklahoma there. They're both undefeated. So if they come out to play, I mean, what's really going to be interesting if you have 5 undefeated teams, then that one team that's going to be left out is really going to be sore about that. So we'll see how things play out, but that possibility could exist. Washington runs the table, Oklahoma runs the table, and Florida State runs the table, Ohio State or Michigan, and Georgia. So one of those teams is going to get left out if it plays out like everyone predicts it to play out.
My prediction is we're going to have some anarchy. Penn State beating Michigan, and then Michigan beating Ohio State, and then there's some kind of rematch there.
And just think about this. I mean, there's going to be discussion on who's ranked 4th and 5th. Think about next year when you talk about 12th and 13th. It's going to be much tougher because at least in the top you have some separation there. But all of a sudden, if you're deciding who's 5 through 12, I promise you from that 10 to 12 area, 10 to 15, it's going to be very difficult, and it's going to come down to some analytics that probably you and I don't understand.
We see it in basketball. Every year they expand the March Madness tournament. It's always some controversy about the teams that are brought in and left out.
And that's at the 64th and 65th team.
Exactly. So you can imagine what it is with this, because right now James Madison is pounding the table like we deserve to be let in. Right. But there's rules. But again, college football season has lived up to expectations. It's why the viewership is through the roof, more than it's been in previous years. We're just grateful to be able to have 2 of the better conferences in the ACC and the SEC that we get to talk about week in and week out. So we appreciate you guys for chopping it up with us and hanging out with us here at the TaxSlayer Gator Bowl Drive the Selection presented by Toyota. We will see you guys next week.
We're back for another off the field update. It is an exciting week here in Jacksonville. It is Florida, Georgia, Florida week. So the town has been painted blue and orange and red and black. It's sure to be a really fun weekend, and we've got some things around the weekend that we want to tell you about. Starting with tonight, we have a social event called Wicked Rivalry. It is a free to the public social at Wicked Barley Brewing Company from 5 to 7 p.m. this evening. If you click the link below to RSVP, we will buy your first drink and you can get 1 free raffle ticket. We're going to raffle off tickets to the big game this weekend, as well as some TaxSlayer Gator Bowl tickets. So we hope to see you there, and there's more information down below about that.
You talked about the big game this weekend, but I beg to differ. I think the biggest game of the weekend is games actually here at Everbank Stadium. This Sunday, we are host to the Little Gator Bowl Pop Warner Championships presented by WWG Mechanical Contractor. It'll be 5 games over the course of the day, starting at 8:30 in the morning. They play almost every hour and every hour and a half. It doesn't really matter who's on the field. You're going to enjoy it. It's $5 at the gate. Honestly, probably one of the coolest events that we get to do all year long. These tiny little football players on this big old football field, it's an incredible experience for them. They get to change in locker rooms and play on the playing surface that the college teams played on the day before. So please come out, share it publicly. It's open to the public. Again, it's $5 at the gate. Really important to us that we show the support of our Green Jacket members. And so if you would put on your green jackets and come, we would appreciate your support on Sunday. Again, gates open at 8:30. I mean, I understand you might be a slow morning on Sunday after Saturday's game, so just come by at some point in the day. We'll be here likely until about 5:30 in the evening on Sunday.
One last thing to talk about this week is the Gator Bowl Charities Award of Excellence Scholarship presented by Momentum Transportation. You've heard me talk about it for a number of weeks. We are in the final week for students to apply. So again, if you know a class of 2024 senior student athlete in Northeast Florida, Southeast Georgia, there's going to be information below for them to get that application in. It closes at 11:59 p.m. on November 1st. So less than a week. So be sure to tell those senior student athletes to get those applications in. We'll see you next week. Have a good weekend.